The morning sun rose over New York City like it had done for millions of years. People walked to work, children went to school, and coffee shops filled with the sound of conversation. No one knew that this would be the last normal day in human history. Commander Daniel Price sat in his office aboard the orbital defense station circling Earth. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. 20 years in the military had taught him to expect trouble, but nothing could have prepared him for what was coming. His screen flickered, and the face of Ambassador Claire Morgan appeared. She was stationed near Jupiter, serving as humanity's voice to the alien species they had met 15 years ago. "Daniel, we have a problem," Claire said. Her voice was shaking. "The Valorians have issued an ultimatum. They want complete surrender. They want us to give up all our technology and become their servants forever." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "How long do we have to respond?" Claire never got the chance to answer. Behind her, through the window of her station, Daniel saw lights appearing in the darkness of space. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. The Valorian armada had arrived. The attack came without warning and without mercy. Admiral Keth Vor, commander of the Valorian fleet, watched from his flagship as his 10,000 warships took their positions around Earth. He was a creature of cold logic and absolute cruelty. To him, humans were nothing more than insects that needed to be crushed. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. The first plasma beams struck the planet at exactly 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time. They hit major cities first. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing. Buildings that had stood for centuries turned to ash in seconds. The oceans began to boil where the beams touched them. The sky turned orange, then red, then black with smoke and debris. Daniel Price watched from orbit as his world died. He tried to contact the surface, tried to reach anyone, but all he heard was static and screaming. Tears ran down his face as he saw North America disappear under a cloud of fire. His wife was down there, his parents, everyone he had ever known. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Earth was no longer blue and green. It was gray and black, a dead rock floating in space. 7 billion people had lived on that planet when the sun rose that morning. By sunset, none remained. But humanity was not completely dead. On Mars, in an underground research facility, Dr. Nathan Cross held his 12-year-old daughter Emma as she sobbed. They had watched the attack on the monitors, helpless to do anything. Nathan's wife had been visiting her sister in California. She was gone now, along with everything they had ever called home. "Dad, why did they do this?" Emma asked between sobs. Nathan had no answer. He just held her tighter and promised himself that somehow, some way, there would be justice. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out. On Luna, the moon colony, people gathered in the underground shelters and wept. On the research stations orbiting Saturn and Jupiter, scientists and workers stared at their screens in disbelief. On the colony ships traveling through the outer reaches of the system, captains informed their passengers of the tragedy. Approximately 800 million humans had survived. They were scattered, shocked, and grieving. But they were alive. General Victoria Lane was the highest-ranking military officer among the survivors. She had been on Mars, overseeing the construction of a new defense outpost. When the attack came, now she sat in a cold bunker, surrounded by junior officers who looked to her for guidance. Victoria was 53 years old, with short silver hair and a face that had never learned to show weakness. She had lost her husband and 3 children in the attack. She had lost her home, but she did not cry. There would be time for tears later. Right now, her people needed a leader. She stood up and walked to the communication console. With the push of a button, she connected to every surviving human settlement, every ship, every station. Her voice, steady and strong, echoed across the emptiness of space. "This is General Victoria Lane. I am taking command of all remaining human forces. What happened today was not a battle. It was murder. 7 billion innocent people were killed without warning, without mercy, and without cause." She paused, letting her words sink in. Around the solar system, survivors gathered around speakers and screens to listen. The Valorians believe they have broken us. They think we will crawl to them on our knees and beg for mercy. They think we are weak because we are few. They are wrong. Her voice grew harder, colder. We will not submit. We will not forget. We will not forgive. From this moment forward, every human being who draws breath has one purpose: survival. And one goal: revenge. The enemy thinks this is over. But this is just the beginning. The transmission ended. Across the scattered remnants of humanity, something changed. The grief was still there, raw and overwhelming, but now it was joined by something else: anger, determination, a cold, burning desire for justice. On the Valorian flagship, Admiral Kethvor received reports that some humans had survived on the outer colonies. He dismissed the information with a wave of his clawed hand. "Leave them," he said. "They are too few and too primitive to matter. Without their homeworld, they will slowly die out. In a generation or two, there will be no humans left in the galaxy." He believed this completely. The Valorians had conquered hundreds of species over their 1,000-year history. All of them had broken after their homeworlds fell. All of them had surrendered or died. Humans would be no different. It was the greatest mistake of his life. In her bunker on Mars, Victoria Lane began planning. She called her most trusted officers to her side. They were tired, grieving, and afraid. But when she spoke, they listened. And when she told them what she intended to do, they did not hesitate. "We're going to need time," said Colonel Henry Walsh, her second in command. "Time to build. Time to prepare." Victoria nodded. "Then we will be patient. We will let them think we are broken. We will bow our heads and accept their occupation. And while they grow comfortable and lazy, we will work in the shadows. We will build weapons they cannot imagine. And when we are ready, we will show them what humans are capable of." She looked at the dead planet on her screen, the world that had been humanity's home for millions of years. "They burned our world," she said quietly. "We will burn their empire." 5 years passed like a slow poison. The Valorian Empire, satisfied that humanity had been crushed, left only a small occupation fleet to watch over the survivors. They demanded tribute, obedience, and regular demonstrations of submission. The humans gave them all of this. They bowed their heads when Valorian ships passed overhead. They offered their resources without complaint. They appeared to be exactly what the Empire expected: a broken people waiting to die. But appearances can be deceiving. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden among millions of floating rocks, humanity was building something. General Victoria Lane had chosen this location because it was impossible to monitor. There were too many asteroids, too much debris, and the Valorians were too arrogant to bother searching. They believed humans lacked the technology and the will to resist. Inside a hollowed-out asteroid called Haven, over 200,000 people lived and worked in secret. Engineers designed new ships, factories produced weapons, training facilities prepared the next generation of soldiers, and in the deepest levels, a team of scientists worked on the most important project of all. Dr. Nathan Cross stood before a massive machine that hummed with power. 5 years ago, he had been a theoretical physicist studying quantum mechanics. Now he was the lead scientist on Project Prometheus, humanity's last hope for survival. "Run the test again," he told his assistant, a young woman named Dr. Rachel Porter. Rachel nodded and activated the device. A beam of modified quantum radiation shot across the laboratory and struck a piece of Valorian shield technology they had captured in a small skirmish. The shield, which should have been able to stop any known weapon, flickered once and then collapsed completely. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. It works. The discovery had come from months of study and countless failures. Valorian shields operated on principles that humanity barely understood. But Nathan had found a weakness. The shields were designed to stop physical and energy attacks. They were not designed to handle quantum-level disruption. It was a flaw so small that no species the Valorians had encountered had ever thought to exploit it. Until now, while Nathan worked on weapons, others prepared for the war to come. Captain Lisa Bennett ran the intelligence network that stretched across every human settlement. She was a small woman with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. Before the attack, she had been a military analyst. Now she was a spy master. Her network included thousands of agents. Some were obvious resistance fighters, others were hidden in plain sight. Ambassador Kira Wells was her greatest success. Kira had been assigned as humanity's liaison to the Valorians. Every day, she sat in meetings with the enemy, nodding and smiling and appearing completely broken. Every night, she transmitted everything she had learned to Lisa's network. "The patrol routes have changed," Kira whispered into her hidden communicator one evening. "I have the new schedules. Also, Admiral Kethvor will be visiting the sector in 3 months. I will try to get the exact date." Lisa received the information and passed it up the chain of command. Every piece of intelligence brought them closer to the day when they could strike back. Training the next generation fell to Commander Samuel Drake. He was 40 years old, with scars on his face from a battle he barely survived during the initial attack. His entire squadron had died protecting civilian evacuation ships. He had been the only survivor, and the guilt had nearly destroyed him. Victoria Lane had found him in a bar on Luna, drinking himself to death. She had sat down across from him and told him the truth. Humanity needed pilots. Good pilots. Pilots who could teach others to fight. "I can't," Samuel had said. "Everyone I train will die." Victoria had looked at him with cold eyes. "Everyone dies, Commander. The question is whether they die as slaves or as warriors. Your choice." Samuel had put down his drink and followed her. Now he ran the pilot training program in Haven, turning young men and women into the deadliest fighter pilots humanity had ever produced. Among his best students was a 17-year-old girl named Emma Cross. Emma had grown up fast in the 5 years since Earth's destruction. The crying child who had watched her world burn was gone. In her place was a young woman with her father's intelligence and her mother's determination. She had joined the military academy at 15, and by 17, she had proven herself as both a pilot and a tactical genius. "You think differently than the others," Samuel told her one day after a simulation exercise. "You see patterns they miss." Emma shrugged. "The Valorians are predictable. They've been winning for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt. We haven't." This insight was exactly what humanity needed. The Valorians had strength, numbers, and technology. Humans had desperation, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. As the 5th anniversary of the burning approached, Victoria Lane gathered her senior commanders in Haven's central chamber. The room was carved from the asteroid's rock, lit by glowing panels that cast everything in a pale blue light. Around the table sat the leaders of humanity's resistance: Nathan Cross, Lisa Bennett, Samuel Drake, and a dozen others. Victoria stood at the head of the table, a holographic map of the solar system floating before her. "5 years ago, I made a promise," she said. "I told our people that we would not submit, that we would not forget, and that we would not forgive. Today, I am here to tell you how we will keep that promise." She pressed a button, and the map zoomed in on the Valorian occupation fleet. 47 warships in total, orbiting Mars and the major stations. "Operation Extinction," Victoria continued. "The goal is simple. We will destroy every Valorian ship in this system. We will kill every Valorian soldier on our stations. And then we will take the war to them." Colonel Walsh raised a hand. "General, they have 47 warships. We have approximately 200 vessels, but most of them are converted freighters. Their technology is still superior, which is why we will not fight fairly," Victoria replied. She nodded to Nathan, who stood and activated another display. Images of the Prometheus lances appeared, alongside technical data. "These weapons will penetrate Valorian shields," Nathan explained. "We've tested them extensively. 1 direct hit will disable a Valorian cruiser. 2 will destroy it. The room fell silent as the commanders absorbed this information. For the first time in 5 years, hope flickered in their eyes. "We strike in 1 month," Victoria said. "Our first target is the occupation fleet at Mars. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we disappear before they know what happened. This is not a war of conquest. This is a war of extinction. Us or them. There is no middle ground." She looked around the table at the faces of her commanders. They had all lost people they loved. They had all suffered under the occupation. And they had all dreamed of this day. "Are there any questions?" No one spoke. "Good. Let's get to work." The Valorian patrol cruiser drifted through the darkness between Mars and the asteroid belt. Its crew was bored. 5 years of occupation duty had taught them that humans were harmless, broken creatures who posed no threat. The night shift commander, a young officer named Velrak, was half asleep at his station when the first alarm sounded. "Contact," said the sensor operator. Confusion in his voice. Multiple contacts. Small signatures. Coming fast. Velrak sat up, annoyed. "Probably debris. Run a detailed scan." The scan took 3 seconds. In that time, 30 human fighters emerged from the shadow of a nearby asteroid and opened fire. Commander Samuel Drake led the attack personally. His fighter, a small craft designed for speed and precision, dove toward the Valorian cruiser with deadly grace. Behind him, his pilots followed in perfect formation. "All units, fire at will," Samuel ordered. The Prometheus lances spoke. Beams of quantum radiation sliced through space and struck the Valorian shields. The shields, which had stopped countless weapons from countless species, flickered and died. The cruiser's hull was exposed. Velrak never had time to send a distress signal. The second volley of Prometheus lances tore through his ship's reactor. The cruiser exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness for 1,000 kilometers. The first battle of Operation Extinction had lasted 47 seconds. The first Valorian ship had been destroyed. Across the occupation fleet, alarms began to sound. But by the time the other ships understood what was happening, Samuel's pilots had already vanished back into the asteroid belt. They left behind nothing but debris and confusion. On the Valorian command ship orbiting Mars, Admiral Kethvor received the news with disbelief. "One of our cruisers was destroyed? By humans?" "Yes, Admiral," his aide replied nervously. "We have lost contact with the patrol vessel. Long-range sensors detected an explosion in its last known position." Kethvor's eyes narrowed. "Send 3 ships to investigate. And increase patrols around all major installations." It was the right order, but it came too late. While Kethvor was giving commands, humanity struck again. The supply depot on the moon of Titan was the largest Valorian installation in the outer system. It held fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and food for the entire occupation fleet. Destroying it would cripple the enemy for months. Captain Lisa Bennett led the ground assault team. She had trained for this mission for 2 years, memorizing every corridor and access point from intelligence provided by her spy network. With her were 50 of humanity's best soldiers, each one carrying enough explosives to level a small building. They approached in civilian transports, vessels that the Valorians had inspected 100 times before. The guards at the docking bay barely glanced at them as they landed. "Stay calm," Lisa whispered to her team. "We're just workers coming for the night shift." They walked through the security checkpoint without incident. The Valorians were so used to obedient humans that they never considered the possibility of attack. It was a blindness that would cost them everything. Once inside, the team split into 4 groups. Each group moved toward a critical point: the fuel storage tanks, the ammunition warehouse, the power generator, and the communication center. They had exactly 15 minutes before the next guard rotation. Lisa led her group to the fuel tanks. They moved silently through the corridors, avoiding patrols and security cameras. When they reached their target, Lisa placed the first charge against the main storage container. "Alpha team in position," she reported over her encrypted communicator. One by one, the other teams checked in. When all charges were set, Lisa gave the final order. All teams, evacuate. We have 5 minutes. They left the same way they came, walking calmly through the checkpoint and returning to their transports. The Valorian guards watched them go, still unaware that death was ticking away beneath their feet. Lisa's transport was 3,000 kilometers away when the charges detonated. The explosion was visible from Saturn's rings. 3 months of supplies disappeared in an instant, along with 200 Valorian soldiers and the entire depot. Admiral Kethvor received the news while still processing the loss of his patrol cruiser. His rage was terrible to behold. "These vermin dare to attack us?" he roared. "They are nothing. They are insects. Send reinforcements. I want 500 ships from the core worlds." The reinforcement fleet was dispatched immediately. 500 Valorian warships entered hyperspace, heading for the Sol system to crush the human rebellion once and for all. They never arrived. Lieutenant Marcus Cole was 25 years old and had lost his entire family on Earth. He had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of Operation Extinction, mining the hyperspace exit routes. The theory was simple. When ships traveled through hyperspace, they had to exit at specific points. If those points were filled with mines, the ships would be destroyed before they could even enter normal space. The problem was that planting the mines required flying directly into the exit zones, areas of unstable space that could tear a ship apart. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. Marcus didn't care. He had nothing left to lose. His squadron of 12 ships spent 3 days placing quantum mines along every predicted exit route. They lost 4 ships to spatial anomalies. They lost 2 more to unexpected Valorian patrols. But when the reinforcement fleet finally dropped out of hyperspace, the mines were waiting. The first 100 Valorian ships died instantly. The mines detonated in a chain reaction that turned the exit zone into a wall of fire. Another 100 ships, unable to change course in time, flew directly into the inferno. The remaining 300 scattered in confusion, their formation broken and their commanders dead. Marcus Cole watched from the shadow of a nearby moon as the largest single defeat in Valorian history unfolded. He allowed himself a small smile before turning his battered ship toward home. Back on Mars, Admiral Kethvor received the casualty reports. 200 ships destroyed, thousands of soldiers dead, and the human fleet had vanished without a trace. For the first time in his long career, Kethvor felt something he had never experienced before: fear. In Haven, General Victoria Lane addressed her commanders. The first phase of Operation Extinction had exceeded all expectations. They had destroyed nearly half the occupation fleet and crippled the enemy's supply lines. More importantly, they had proven that Valorians could die. "This is only the beginning," Victoria reminded them. "We have hurt them, but we have not broken them. They will come back harder and angrier than before. We must be ready." Emma Cross stood at the back of the room, listening. She had participated in the attack on the occupation fleet, flying as Samuel Drake's wingman. She had killed her first enemy that night. She had expected to feel something: guilt, triumph, horror. Instead, she felt only cold determination. The Valorians had murdered her mother and 7 billion other people. They had burned her planet and tried to enslave her species. They deserved everything that was coming to them. "What's our next target?" Emma asked. Victoria looked at the young woman and saw the future of humanity. Cold, hard, and absolutely unbreakable. "Admiral Kethvor himself," Victoria replied. "We're going to cut off the head of the snake." 1 year had passed since the first strike of Operation Extinction. In that time, humanity had transformed from victims into predators. The Valorian occupation fleet had been reduced by half. 3 human stations had been liberated, and fear had become a constant companion for every Valorian soldier in the system. Admiral Kethvor rarely slept anymore. Every night, he dreamed of fire and death. Every day brought news of another attack, another lost ship, another failure. He had requested reinforcements from the core worlds, but the High Council was distracted by wars on other fronts. They sent him scraps when he needed armies. The humans are vermin, the council told him. Handle them yourself. They did not understand. They had not seen what HFY had seen. These humans were not like the other species the Empire had conquered. They did not break. They did not surrender. They only grew stronger with each passing day. In Haven, Dr. Nathan Cross had made another breakthrough. For months, his team had been working on a way to track Valorian ships through hyperspace. The enemy's ability to appear anywhere without warning was their greatest advantage. Taking that away would change everything. It's based on quantum entanglement, Nathan explained to General Lane. Every Valorian ship produces a unique signature when it enters hyperspace. We can detect that signature and predict where they'll exit. Victoria studied the data on her screen. How accurate is it? Within a few thousand kilometers, more than enough to prepare an ambush. Victoria nodded slowly. This was the tool they needed for the next phase of the operation. Admiral HFY had retreated to his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, surrounded by his remaining loyal ships. He was too well protected for a direct assault. But if they could predict his movements, they could catch him when he was vulnerable. The plan came together over the following weeks. It was the most audacious mission humanity had ever attempted. A direct assault on the enemy flagship, combined with an infiltration team that would board the ship and disable its shields from within. Commander Samuel Drake would lead the space assault. His pilots had proven themselves in dozens of battles, and they were ready for the ultimate test. Emma Cross, now 18, would serve as tactical coordinator aboard the command ship. Her ability to read enemy movements and predict their responses had saved countless lives. Captain Lisa Bennett would lead the infiltration team. With her was Ambassador Kira Wells, whose cover had finally been blown when a suspicious Valorian officer had intercepted one of her transmissions. Kira had escaped with the help of the Resistance Network, but she could no longer work as a spy. Now she would fight openly. And there was Marcus Cole, the pilot who had destroyed the reinforcement fleet. His suicide mission had somehow left him alive. Though his body was scarred and his ship had been held together with little more than hope, he had become a legend among the human forces, a symbol of what one person could accomplish against impossible odds. The Eternal Dominion will be traveling through hyperspace in 3 days, Victoria announced at the final briefing. It's moving to a new position to oversee the reconstruction of the Titan Depot. This is our chance. The attack force launched from Haven under cover of an asteroid storm. 200 ships, carrying the hopes of all humanity, moved silently through the darkness toward their destiny. The first contact came exactly as predicted. The Eternal Dominion dropped out of hyperspace at the calculated coordinates, surrounded by 50 escort vessels. They had expected empty space. Instead, they found the human fleet waiting for them. All ships, engage. Victoria ordered from her command center on Haven. Across the void, Samuel Drake led the charge. The battle was brutal from the first moment. Valorian ships were larger and more powerful than human vessels. Their weapons could destroy a human fighter with a single hit, but the human pilots were faster, more maneuverable, and far more determined. They weaved through the enemy formation like deadly shadows, their Prometheus lances finding their targets again and again. Emma sat at her tactical station, her eyes moving across a dozen screens at once. She saw patterns in the chaos that no one else could see. When a Valorian cruiser tried to flank the human formation, she redirected a squadron to intercept. When the enemy concentrated their fire on the command ship, she ordered a withdrawal that pulled them out of danger. Marcus, you have 3 fighters on your tail, Emma reported calmly. Break left on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Marcus Cole threw his ship into a sharp turn. The enemy fighters followed, but they flew directly into the firing solution of a waiting human squadron. All 3 were destroyed in seconds. Thanks, Cross, Marcus replied. I owe you a drink. While the space battle raged, Lisa Bennett's infiltration team made their approach. Their ship was a captured Valorian transport, modified with human technology and filled with enough explosives to destroy a small moon. They slipped through the chaos of battle and docked with the Eternal Dominion without being challenged. Inside the flagship, the team moved quickly. They had studied the ship's layout for months, memorizing every corridor and access point. Kira Wells led the way, her knowledge of Valorian protocols allowing them to bypass several security checkpoints. "The shield generator is 2 levels below us," Kira whispered. "We'll have to go through the engineering section." They encountered their first resistance at the entrance to engineering. A squad of Valorian soldiers blocked their path, weapons raised. Lisa didn't hesitate. "Take them," she ordered. The fight was short and brutal. Human soldiers, smaller and weaker than their Valorian opponents, used speed and surprise to overcome the enemy. Within 30 seconds, all the guards were dead. They reached the shield generator just as Admiral Kethvor realized what was happening. His voice echoed through the ship's communication system, ordering all hands to defend engineering. But it was too late. Marcus Cole had seen the infiltration team dock with the flagship. He knew what needed to happen next. The Eternal Dominion's secondary shields were still active, and the team would need a distraction to complete their mission. Without hesitation, Marcus pointed his damaged fighter at the flagship's engine array and pushed the throttle to maximum. "Marcus, what are you doing?" Emma's voice came through his communicator, sharp with alarm. "Making sure this ends today," Marcus replied. "Tell the general, it was worth it." His fighter struck the engine array at full speed. The explosion tore through the rear section of the flagship, sending shockwaves through the entire ship. Power fluctuated. Systems failed, and in the shield generator room, the controls went dark. Lisa Bennett set the final charge and hit the detonator. The shield generator exploded, and the Eternal Dominion's primary defenses collapsed. "Shields are down," Emma reported. "All ships, concentrate fire on the flagship." The human fleet responded as one. Prometheus lances converged on the Eternal Dominion from every direction. The mighty flagship, pride of the Valorian sector fleet, began to break apart under the assault. On the bridge, Admiral Kethvor watched his ship die around him. Fires burned in every section. His crew lay dead at their stations. Through the view screen, he could see the human fleet circling like predators around wounded prey. With trembling hands, he activated the emergency broadcast system. His message would reach every Valorian ship in the sector, and eventually, the core worlds themselves. "They are coming for you all," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The humans. They are not what we thought. They are." A Prometheus lance struck the bridge directly. Admiral Kethvor, murderer of 7 billion humans, died in fire and pain. Lisa Bennett's team barely escaped the dying flagship. Their transport was damaged, its engines failing, but they managed to reach the safety of the human fleet before the Eternal Dominion finally exploded. In the silence that followed, Emma Cross looked at the debris field that had once been the enemy flagship. Marcus Cole was gone. So were hundreds of other pilots and soldiers. But they had won. Victoria Lane's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, return to base. We have work to do." The war was not over. But for the first time, humanity could see the end. The death of Admiral Kethvor sent shockwaves through the Valorian Empire. For 1,000 years, no lesser species had killed one of their admirals. For 1,000 years, the Empire had been invincible. Now, for the first time, they knew fear. The High Council convened an emergency session on their throne world. The holographic display before them showed the burning wreckage of the Eternal Dominion, played on repeat as a reminder of their failure. "These humans must be exterminated," declared the first speaker, an ancient Valorian whose voice carried the weight of centuries. "We will commit the entire sector fleet, 300 warships. There will be no survivors this time." The order was given. The fleet was assembled, and across the darkness of space, humanity prepared for the final battle. General Victoria Lane stood on the observation deck of Haven, watching her fleet form up outside. 200 ships, crewed by soldiers who had lost everything and feared nothing. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that wanted to wipe them from existence. She had never been more proud. "All commanders, report to the briefing room," she announced. "It's time to finish this." The briefing was short. Everyone knew what was at stake. Dr. Nathan Cross presented the weapon that would decide the battle. A quantum cascade device, capable of disabling every Valorian ship within 1,000,000 kilometers. The device would overload their systems, shutting down power, weapons, and life support simultaneously. There's a problem, Nathan admitted. The device has to be detonated from inside the enemy formation. The ship carrying it won't be able to escape the effect radius. Silence fell over the room. Everyone understood what this meant. Someone would have to fly into the heart of the Valorian fleet, activate the device, and die. I'll do it, Victoria said calmly. I've been giving orders from safety while our people died. It's time I earned my place beside them. No one argued. There was nothing to say. The general had made her decision, and it was the right one. Captain Lisa Bennett would coordinate the ground-based weapons platforms. Commander Samuel Drake would lead the fighter squadrons, and Emma Cross, now a full commander despite her youth, would direct the entire fleet from the command ship. When the device activates, every Valorian ship will go dark, Emma explained. We'll have approximately 3 minutes before their backup systems come online. In those 3 minutes, we have to destroy as many ships as possible. After that, they'll be wounded, but still dangerous. Then we make sure those 3 minutes count, Samuel replied. The battle took place in the space between Mars and the asteroid belt. The Valorian fleet arrived in perfect formation, 300 warships arranged in a wall of destruction. Their commander, a young admiral eager to avenge Kethvor's death, broadcast a message to the human fleet. Surrender now, and we will grant you quick deaths. Resist, and we will make you suffer for generations. Victoria Lane responded from her single-person vessel, already moving toward the center of the enemy formation. We are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not break. And we do not forgive. She cut the transmission and pushed her engines to maximum speed. The battle began. Human fighters launched from their carriers and dove into the Valorian formation. Prometheus lances flashed through the void, finding their targets with deadly accuracy. Valorian weapons responded, filling space with fire and death. Samuel Drake led his squadron through a gap in the enemy lines, targeting the communication ships that coordinated the Valorian fleet. All wings, follow me. Take out their command structure. Around him, pilots he had trained from nothing became angels of destruction. They flew with a precision and courage that defied belief, weaving through enemy fire and striking where it hurt most. On the command ship, Emma Cross watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. Her mind processed information faster than any computer, seeing patterns and opportunities in the chaos. She redirected squadrons, coordinated attacks, and kept the fleet alive through the opening minutes of the engagement. General Lane is approaching the device activation point, reported an officer. Emma looked at the screen and saw Victoria's ship, alone among the enemy fleet. Valorian ships were turning to intercept, but they were too slow. The general had slipped through their formation like a ghost. All ships, prepare for cascade effect, Emma ordered. The moment the Valorians go dark, I want every weapon firing. Victoria Lane reached the center of the enemy formation and stopped her ship. Around her, Valorian warships loomed like mountains of metal and death. She could see their weapons charging, preparing to destroy her. She activated the communication channel one last time. This is for Earth. For the 7 billion you murdered. For everyone we lost. Then she pressed the button. The quantum cascade spread outward at the speed of light. It struck the nearest Valorian ship and spread to the next, and the next, and the next. Within seconds, every enemy vessel in the formation was affected. Power failed. Weapons went silent. The mighty Valorian fleet became a collection of helpless metal tombs. Victoria Lane died in the cascade, her ship's systems failing along with everything else. But she died smiling, knowing that her sacrifice had given humanity its chance. Fire, Emma commanded. 200 human ships opened fire at once. Prometheus lances tore through the disabled enemy vessels, finding reactors and ammunition stores and fuel tanks. Explosions bloomed across the void as ship after ship died. Samuel Drake led his fighters through the chaos, targeting the largest vessels. "Hit the battleships first. Don't let them recover." Lisa Bennett's ground-based platforms added their fire to the assault. Long-range weapons reached across space to strike enemies that couldn't fight back. For 3 minutes, humanity unleashed years of grief and rage and hatred. They fired until their weapons overheated. They rammed when they couldn't shoot. They sacrificed themselves to destroy just one more enemy ship. When the Valorian backup systems finally came online, only 80 of their 300 ships remained operational, and the human fleet was still fighting. The Valorian commander ordered a retreat. His broken fleet fled toward hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of 220 warships and the bodies of 100,000 soldiers. It was the greatest defeat in Valorian history. The battle was over. The occupation was finished. Humanity had won. In the aftermath, Emma Cross stood on the observation deck of the fleet's new flagship. They had named it the Remembrance, in honor of all those who had died for this victory. Behind her, crew members celebrated and wept and embraced each other. After 6 years of horror, they had finally achieved what seemed impossible. But Emma did not celebrate. She watched the stars with cold, determined eyes. The Valorian Empire still existed. Somewhere out there. They were already planning their revenge. They would not make the same mistakes again. Next time, they would come with everything they had. Her father joined her on the observation deck. Nathan Cross looked older than his years, worn down by grief and work and the weight of survival. But his eyes still held the same fire that had driven him to create the weapons that saved humanity. "The Council is already debating what to do next," he said quietly. "Some want to fortify our defenses and wait. Others want to push into Valorian territory while they're weak." "What do you think?" Emma asked. Nathan was silent for a long moment. He thought of his wife, who had died on Earth. He thought of the 7 billion people who would never see another sunrise. He thought of all the suffering his species had endured. "They killed 7 billion of us," he said finally. Emma nodded. "And we will make them pay for every single one." She turned to face the bridge crew. "Set course for the hyperspace jump point. We're not waiting for them to come back." "Where are we going?" asked the navigation officer. Emma looked at the star map, at the cluster of lights that marked Valorian territory. Somewhere in that cluster was their throne world, the heart of the empire that had tried to exterminate humanity. It would take years to reach it. It would cost countless more lives. But the journey would end with only one species standing. "We're going hunting," Emma replied. The fleet's engines roared to life. 200 ships, carrying the survivors of a murdered world, jumped into hyperspace. Operation Extinction had been the beginning. Now came the reckoning. The Valorians had burned Earth and killed 7 billion innocent people. They had thought humanity would break. They had thought wrong. And now, for the first time in their 1,000-year history, the Empire would learn what it meant to be prey. The war was just beginning, and humanity would not stop until the last Valorian ship was ash. The last Valorian soldier was dead, and the galaxy knew that some species should never be underestimated. Earth would be avenged. No matter the cost, no matter how long it took, this was the human way.